Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
Get ready for the greatest roast of all time, the Roast of Tom Brady, a Netflix live event happening May 5th. Hosted by Kevin Hart, the 7-time world champion gets his cleats held to the fire by famous friends and frenemies on an unforgettable night where everything is fair game. Tune in on May 5th at 5 p.m. Pacific time for the Roast of Tom Brady, live only on Netflix.
Hey, what's up, Blazer fans? Welcome to the Super Mega Olympic All-Star edition of the Blazers Edge podcast.
Dun, dun,
we are
dun.
part of the Almighty Baller Radio Network, and you can find us on Stitcher or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm not Tara Lipinski. I'm Tara Bowen-Biggs, and he is not Johnny Weir. He is Blazers outsider, Danny Meringue.
There we go. Good
Dan,
God.
This weekend is all about sports excellence. Of course, we have the Olympics going on right now, so we get to see the culmination of years and years of hard work, people participating in events, and if they don't stick the landing, they'll die. They'll run into a wall and they'll crack their head open.
I love the difference between the Summer Olympics. Summer Olympics, hey, let's see who can run the fastest, jump the highest, swim the fastest. In the Winter Olympics, who can die first?
Who can survive?
Seriously, it's the Winter Hunger Games.
Bad enough. If it's not bad enough, we have an event where we have a gun.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Here's a great idea. Let's all get on the ice with these giant daggers on our feet and spin around in circles really fast with our partner. What could possibly go wrong? Oh, or another one. Let's go ahead and shoot head first down an ice slide at 80 miles an hour where you literally have no brakes and there's nothing stopping you from going face first into a giant wall of ice. I think don't get me wrong, the competitive nature and the level of which these athletes all participate at is certainly a draw, but there's a little bit of the dark side there when you're watching the Winter Olympics. I wonder if this guy's really gonna crash. Every time you see something, because when you fall in, you drop a baton in a marathon and tumble on the track, you might get spiked a little bit. Sure, that sucks. But the threat of a 13-inch blade slicing across you is not something you typically have to worry about in anything other than half the sports that apparently happen in the Winter Olympics.
Well, and it's also the other thing about the Winter Olympics is they're the snow events, the flipping and the snowboarding and the skiing and all that stuff. These incredible athletes somehow make it look really easy. So you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I could see how if you worked for a few years, you could figure out how to do that. But there's one event that I think looks like the most miserable thing to ever do on the entire planet, and that is the cross-country ski racing. That looks like the most miserable thing you could possibly do. I can't believe the athletes can do this. When you see them trucking as fast as they can uphill on cross-country skis, and then
uphill both ways
the one where they
snow.
pass off the baton, I can't believe that. Why would you do that to yourself? It's incredible. Well, because I can never stop thinking about the Blazers. The whole time I've been sitting in the couch watching the Olympics all weekend. But the whole time I've been doing it, I've been trying to figure out which Blazers would be good at which different events. Mm-hmm. So I thought up a couple, and I have a couple for you to tell me. So I'll go first. Which Blazer would be best at figure skating? And obviously the answer is Damian Lillard, right? Because
I was going to go with Shabazz or CJ.
No, it's Dame. We all for fun. He goes roller skating. I mean, he's already really good at roller skating. He rents out a park. He goes with his family.
But CJ puts people on skates.
No, Dan. When you're talking about like who could actually perform at best, also think about the costumes that we know that Dame, I can see him.
He does
in
already
some sort
go
of
shirtless with suits, so you're right.
I know. Can't you see him adapting that into like an ice skating outfit, like the shirt off suit, then with the pants that are made out of that weird stuff that like hooks around the bottom of your skates? I could totally see Damian just like rocking that look on
the one that I keep going to here is Ed Davis is in the bobsled.
Oh,
like big, strong, fast dude.
Yeah,
he's definitely in the back seat.
Yeah,
like he's.
Do you think he would do 2-man or 4-man?
I think he could do the 1-man.
Yeah. Do they have a 1-man? No, I haven't seen that yet.
I'm trying to think of Ed Davis stuffing himself into a bobsled, and that just makes me laugh.
I think my dream bobsled team for the Blazers is because I think it's easier when they're all about the same size. I don't know why. Maybe I heard that somewhere or something. So I think for the 4-man bobsled team, we need to go with all the 6'5" shooting guards. So we go with Pat Connaughton, we get CJ Wilcox, Wade Baldwin, we call them up, and then we bring back Anthony Morrow, and then they're all like a bobsled full of 6'5" shooting guards.
I could see that. Well, I don't know if you want Anthony Morrow on that because I don't know if Morrow has legs left. Don't get me wrong, Morrow can shoot, but I don't know how much he's got left in the wheels.
Pat could carry him. Okay, who do you think would be good at best at curling?
Ooh, throwing that out
there.
Have
you had a chance to watch any of that?
Oh God, yeah. No, I used to go curling when I was stationed in North Dakota. Shout out Grand Forks Curling Club. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to do in Grand Forks, North Dakota. So I had
no idea.
You find ways to make these things work. Yeah. So
you have real knowledge of the sport. So who do you think would be best?
I'm actually going to go with Meyers.
That's who I would have gone with.
Because you as the shooter, you've got to be loud. And Meyers is very.
Is that the person who throws the rock down the ice?
Yeah. So you've got him throwing it down. When he's on, he's on. He can shoot the rock literally.
Well, and it's okay to be careful.
Yeah,
it's okay to
and you want to measure it up, take your time. You can actually get a little pump fake action going too. And then throw on top of that, you hear Meyers yell, "Sweep, sweep, sweep." I could actually see that happen. And then, that one's a pretty easy one for me.
I think
and
you're
Meyers
right
could wear the skin tight curling tracksuits that are really common now. And I actually saw, I can't remember what nation it was. It was Czechs, maybe. One of them had a Carmelo Anthony shooting sleeve on his throwing arm, and I was like, man, we are one step away from some dude showing up out here with a Supreme shooting sleeve and just really taking it back. So I'm gonna go with Meyers on this, the non-height beast Meyers out there as the lead curling specialist.
I could see him doing that. I think that Mo Harkless would be really good at the half pipe. He seems like a snowboarder, he could just do the super chill. I could see him wearing the whole baggy outfit and just calmly going down there and just doing some crazy half pipe stuff. Yeah, exactly. Just
fundamentally
but
not
in a
caring.
good way. Not not caring, I don't care about this, but just letting it all go and just being very zen about you know what, I'm going for it, and this is my time. I'm going to be out there. I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to be done, and then I'm going to be then I'm going to shut down until they call me up for my next round. That's kind of what I think. I think he'd be good at that.
I want to see Nurkic in the synchronized or partner ice skating.
The ice dancing, or in. Well, I was thinking Meyers and Ellie would be really good in figure skating, because think about how much she could he could throw her up and she could twirl and he would totally catch her.
Yeah, I don't trust Meyers on skates. The Bosnian Beast, he's got some nimble toes. That footwork is pretty. That's
true. You've
pretty
talked
impressive.
About his footwork a lot.
I think, and it would be really, really fun to try to watch him throw the triple sow cow.
Man, you know what? With the men's figure skating, they twirl around in the air so many times now that you can't even tell how many times they're doing it.
Yeah, there was actually a
once
graph.
They go around 3 times, it's you just lose track.
Like there's like analytics for ice skating now, and somebody was joking about it on an analytics Twitter the other day. Like I think it was NBC, they put up a chart like showing how many more like triple plus rotations that the men had thrown this year over like the past 10 Olympics. It was something astronomical. It was like this was like the big year, or I should say the big Olympic year as far as like growth in the sport, as far as like pushing it to another level.
Well, I'm glad you found your ice skating analytics people, Dan.
Yes,
that's great.
Shout out to ice skating analytics folks. We out here.
I have one more. I don't want to beleaguer this for too long, but I really want to know who you think would be best at the skeleton, and that's the one where you were talking about, where you jump on a sled and go
kamikaze
head first, face down. No brakes, no controls whatsoever, except for just leaning to side to side.
That's Aminu.
Who do you think would be best?
That's Aminu.
You think it would be Aminu?
Well, I mean, we see it nightly.
I'm worried because he has a little kid, and I feel like he'd be more responsible.
Go
like,
head
he'd be
first
like, no.
down the lane, out of control. I mean, that sounds like an Aminu drive.
Okay, yeah.
It's either him or Baz. Like it's gonna be one of those two, just because Baz is tiny and fast and can shoot down. But Chief is pretty reckless, and it's like a controlled recklessness that I can get behind.
I have to, of all for the amount of embrace the chaos I've been tweeting this year. Every time Chief gets the ball, I have to say that's probably a pretty good
embrace the skeleton.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so speaking of excellence, let's talk about that last Blazer game before All-Star break.
I totally called that a win,
switch
by the
gears?
way.
What?
I totally called that Warriors game a win. No, I didn't.
Okay, well, so the because it feels like it's been like an age ago. Trailblazers beat the defending champions 123-117. Damian Lillard came off a 50-point game to put in 44 on Valentine's Day, which was incredible. Yusuf Nurkic came to play.
Good Nurk.
He had a double-double, 17 and 13, plus he had 3 assists. And despite 50 points from some guy named Kevin Durant, the Blazers outlasted them, and they headed into the All-Star break with a record of 32-26. What stood out to you about that game, and what can we learn, if anything, when the season starts up again after All-Star break?
Damian Lillard is a legitimate top 15 player in the NBA.
Jeez Louise, yeah.
I mean, what he's been doing for the past 5 games, he leads the NBA in scoring. He's just been on one. I mean, over the last 5, 34 points, almost 6 assists and 3 rebounds, and he's basically shooting 50, 40, 100. He's getting almost 9 free throws.
50, 40, 100.
He's shooting 100% from the free throw line. Like,
oh my God.
Let me change this per game to total so I can see how many free throws he's got in this period. So 5 games, he's
Seems
had
like a lot.
41 free throws. So he's getting the line 8+ times a game.
Are you saying he hasn't missed one in 5 games?
Yeah, he's 41 of 41.
Oh no, we just messed it up.
No, I called it up.
Sorry.
I called it up before the Warrior game, and he went a perfect one there too. So he's still keeping it going. But I mean, the level at which he's been playing at is just dumb. I mean, I can't put it any other way. On
we need to
outsiders,
increase your vocabulary.
No, I mean, it was just like there's just no other way to quantify like what. We brought this up on the Outsiders that because some people thought this was hot takey. That Damian Lillard right now is already a better player and more revered and more successful than Terry Porter ever was. And
Depends on how you measure success.
If you want to say team success, then yeah, you can give it to Porter for getting to the finals. There's no doubt about that. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about individual accolades. Okay. And some people were like, no, I don't know about that. I'm like, there's not a season in Porter's career where he did what Dame's been doing. Like, I keep trying to quantify like what statistically his box score has been. Like we've talked about it all season. Like guys that are averaging 26, 6 and 5, 26, 7 and 5. Like everybody that's on that list is, if not in the Hall of Fame, a first ballot Hall of Fame guy. Like that's the level he's at.
Do you think he's the best point guard in the league right now?
No, I think he's playing the best basketball in the league over the last 2 weeks. Like he's going to win. Okay. He's going to win Player of the Week. He's probably, barring a spectacular collapse, he's probably going to win Player of the Month for February.
For February,
yeah.
Okay.
It's a shortened month, which could help or hurt him. KD or Steph could go completely supernova and make something happen. But like when you look at his production in February, it's pretty crazy. Heck, if you look at his production since the turn of the year, he's one of the best players in basketball. So in February, Dame's second in the league in scoring behind Anthony Davis. And Dame's averaging 32, 6.7 assists.
Above Harden and Westbrook, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the leading scorers for the month of February: Davis, Dame, Harden, George, Depot, KD, Butler, James, Kemba, and Westbrook. And here's the thing. Of all those guys, only Durant, LeBron, and PG, I think, are shooting. No, AD's shooting better. So he's right in the middle, but he's right behind them. Yeah, Kevin Durant in 7 games is shooting 65%. Good God.
So he had 50 points in that game.
50, 39, 39, 44, or his last 4 games.
So what happened to the defending champions that the Blazers were able to take it to them? I mean, so like Yusuf Nurkic brought it that game. He caught a lot of flack after the Utah game. He did the disappearing act. There was a lot of talk about what happened to him. Is he really injured? Lots of speculation about what's going on.
I think somebody told him to suck it up. I think somebody told him to suck it up.
He showed up for that.
Yeah, because the contrast in players between the Utah game and that Warrior game were 2 totally different players. I think Dame, I have no evidence of this. This is just my own personal opinion.
Right.
I think Dame pulled Nurkic aside and said, you need to figure this out. Because you
need to show up.
Yeah, the difference in player was drastic. There was, it was nuts.
I mean, it was really the first time all season that I saw, what I would consider the Nurkic that played
From
at the end of last season.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
I think he's had some good games, but I think wire to wire in this game, he was there. And that's why you saw him to close the game out. And I think his impact was bigger than his box score, and he had a hell of a box score night.
Yeah, he did have a
17
nice
and 13. Good God. I'll take that every night. Honestly, consistent Nurkic, even though Nurkic is at 14 and 8, which I think is a good number, if you just said Nurkic gives me 14 and 8 every night, but his field goal percentage was up and his turnovers were down, I'd take that. And that's worth a lot of money. But when you get fully engaged Nurkic that's altering shots, blocking shots in the paint, forcing guys away. I mean, if it wasn't for Kevin Durant going completely supernova from outside, because KD wasn't killing it. He wasn't getting to the inside. When he was getting there, he was scoring, but he wasn't getting there easy. I think it was a combination, as far as that game in general, it was a combination of Dame being just unreal, Nurkic finally embracing and becoming the guy who he thought he could be. And I think there's a few things wrong with the Warriors. I don't want to take too much away from the Blazers' win because it was a great game. It was really enjoyable. It was a ton of fun. But the Warriors were not firing on all cylinders in that game. And credit
they didn't have Patrick McCaw, right? Yeah, they didn't have Patrick.
Blazer killer Patrick McCaw.
He totally has come on against the Blazers.
He has casually torched us in the past, which is hilarious. But
so it was tongue in cheek, but not really.
But the Warriors are and you've heard Steve Kerr talk about it, and he had he gave up the coaching duties, which irked the guys in Phoenix. Yeah. But who cares about Phoenix because they're getting just
be nice.
Don't get blown up by 40. That's kind of how I feel about it. I get why those guys are pissed off in Phoenix, but there's an easy way to fix that. Don't get blown out by 40. And you can fix that on the court, because if you see that and you feel it's disrespectful, you've got the personnel on your roster to spike a dude to the floor. You can send a hard foul, not get tossed, and be like, okay, how about you not coach anymore? Have your coach come back to the bench. There's a pretty easy way to get around
so
that.
You think it should have been pretty ezy for Phoenix to just get mad and not lose by 40?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
Honestly,
I don't think it's quite that easy.
Maybe not for Phoenix.
These guys want to lose by 40. Come on.
Losing by 40, especially the Suns that have done it, they're going to hit an NBA record probably
Yeah,
this
they've
year.
lost a lot of games by 40.
Like don't get me wrong, like those 76ers teams that were part of the Trust the Process team were very, very bad. These teams here have much more talent on them in the Suns, and they're getting beat like this. So I think it's more of a mentality thing than it is a talent thing, and I think that those are things you can control. Like not getting blown out is one thing, getting embarrassed is a whole other thing. But it's like back.
So
to
can you?
No,
yeah, go back to that game. Well, back to that game. I mean, do you think that game tells us more about the team from the Bay Area or more about the Blazers?
I think, in the grand scheme, people probably won't like this. I think it tells us more about the Warriors. Because let's say that the Warriors are on fire, because Steph was just not at all in that game. Like, I would love to say that Damian Lillard took Steph Curry out of his game, but I haven't seen Damian Lillard do that to anybody. Like, I've seen Damian Lillard play good defense. I've never seen him take somebody out of a game.
Oh, he takes Russ Westbrook out of the game.
Okay, mentally he does.
He gets in his head so fast.
This is very true. That's a different story. But I'm talking about with his defense, and because I don't think Steph's the guy. I think the only guy that's going to get in Steph's head is either Steph or LeBron.
Yeah. I think that sounds about right. Trying to take Steph down a notch is like trying to take down somebody else I know a notch. Not easy.
Yeah, exactly.
I have one more quick question about that game. That one thing that struck me while I was watching it, and I was watching Nurkic having a good game, even though, I mean, he only dunked twice, but it was twice, so that's good.
Well,
and it was
only twice.
hand.
I was going to say, I was like, come on now. Twice is that's like a
For him,
year's
that's a
ration.
lot. Okay, I'm trying to be complimentary. I'm trying to embrace the chaos of the Nurkic layups the same way I embrace the chaos
Speaking
of
of chaos, Joel Embiid is causing all kinds of chaos in this All-Star game. It's actually
wrecking havoc on the All-Star game.
It's a 141-144 score with a minute 40 to go. Steph's team.
Oh wow, it's a low-scoring game.
It's low-scoring, and their Embiid is on LeBron on a step-back three. I'm play-by-playing this because LeBron just hit a step-back three on Joel Embiid. It's a tie game with a minute 30 to go. So this is fun. Like, I don't want to get too far off track.
Do we need to like pause the podcast so you can go watch the end of it so you can see what happens?
We're gonna keep going. I'm just gonna yell randomly as we go through it. But now Embiid is going straight one-on-one with LeBron, and KD brought help. Okay. That's disrespectful. That's disrespectful, Sarah. You let a guy go one-on-one with Joel Embiid and LeBron James out on the perimeter, no help. Now Embiid is like, okay, I'm going to get you back, man, and takes him down to the post. LeBron James, down to the post, and Kevin Durant is going to go help him? Come on. Come on, Sarah.
Okay, I'm going to skip my last question because it's one that's a serious question, but I think I can work it in later. But since we're watching the All-Star, since you're watching the end of the All-Star game, are you like big into the All-Star game?
I am big into,
or like into the weekend.
The weekend's kind of Now the dunk contest. The dunk contest is definitely something I always get behind, and my adult son Donovan Mitchell, shout out, he went off. I love the tribute to Vince Carter, and I swear to God, every time he cocked the ball back, his arms got longer. Like with each successful dunk, he became Gumby.
Just to taunt you.
Yeah, he did. He's like, it was like every time his arms stretched back further, that was how much further away he was from being drafted by the Blazers. This is every single time. It was just, no, Donovan. I miss you.
Okay, we'll get to that in just a sec. But some people said that Dennis Smith got robbed.
He did get robbed. He should have been in the finals.
So tell me about the two best dunks that they did and why. I mean, like, what did it come down to? Because I didn't watch it, but I need the 30-second synopsis of each dunk and which one was truly better.
I mean, I think they were both, like, in my mind, the best thing to do would have been to have Donovan Mitchell and Dennis Smith Jr. in the finals, because I like. Okay,
so they didn't get to go head to head in the end.
But my personal view is little dudes that get up higher, and this has pretty much been kind of the trend. They get rewarded more because they have to get up higher. Like,
they have farther to go.
Like what JaVale McGee did in dunking two basketballs on two different hoops. Like, I don't think people really understand like how far away two basketball hoops, like side by side, really are. And physical length of his arms necessary, speaking of like Gumby arms, go gadget arms, to do what JaVale McGee did. But because he's 7 foot tall and he has the wingspan of a pterodactyl, everybody's like, no big deal. But 6'3" Donovan Mitchell decides he's going to get up there and show off his like 44 or 45 inch vertical. Like, that's impressive, because his winning dunk was the Vince Carter tribute dunk. The 360 windmill, and then he even gave the Vince celebration. The Vince celebration was a nice capper, but his shut it down, it's over part of the celebration, like it was a little soft, it was a little weak. Oh God! And like all things in life, James Harden just choked in a prime moment of a big game.
The All-Star game, that's the big game.
Yep. I mean, if there's a big moment for James Harden to choke in, he will find it. He just airballed a three.
Ooh. Ouch.
Hey, don't choke in game 6s or game 7s, and I won't make jokes.
Well, let's go back to Donovan Mitchell, because I know you've been keeping your eye on him, and the Blazers we recently played Utah. We're going to play Utah again. There's going to be a lot of Utah in our life for the next 6 weeks. So, well, tell me about Donovan Mitchell. And actually, so I watched Coach Nick from B-Ball Breakdown did a video about why the Jazz are beating everybody right now. And after watching that video, I mean, they are as good as a team that is on an 11-game winning streak. I mean, at first I thought, I was like, this is just coincidence. Maybe they're just getting lucky, because luck sometimes figures into things.
It absolutely does.
But I don't think they are. I think they're really good.
No, and remember how crazy people thought when I said at the beginning of this season that the Jazz were going to be a good team and they could arguably be a better team than Portland? Everybody's like, no, There's no way. Portland's coming back. They have chemistry. Nurk Fever's going to come in. I'm like, Donovan Mitchell's a player. Now, the loss of George Hill and Gordon Hayward hurts, but it's a bigger role for Rudy Gobert. And the one I think that I got wrong was I thought Rodney Hood was really going to grow into this team. Like, I figured that was going to be – like I thought
clearly there's no place for him anymore.
Yeah, I mean, he's out now. But Donovan Mitchell has been even better than I thought he was going to be his rookie year. And then on top of that, you've got Gobert back healthy. Derek Favors is playing like an actual NBA player. Joe Ingles is a stud. I mean, he's probably the most underrated dude in the league. Against Portland, he was career high.
Yeah, that game, and he's bigger than I thought he was.
He's 6'8". He's a big dude.
I mean, he seems like he's taller than that. I mean, he was really taking up a lot of space. He was commanding a lot of attention. He was making a lot of shots. He was having a really nice night. But I want to hear more about what is special about Donovan Mitchell, because I know that you wish that the Blazers had drafted him, and you thought that he would be a really great fit for the Blazers back during draft night. I want to hear more about that, and I want to know what role you think he would have played had he come here.
Okay, so for just to kind of rehash everything here, the course of events that I pictured happening was the Blazers, if you knew that you were going into the draft, if you knew that you had a deal or a plan in place to trade Allen Crabbe, you needed to look for another guard, because you've got plenty of big bodies that you can kind of work your way through. And you have additional picks on the back end. So the guys that I talked about were Donovan Mitchell, number 1. Number 2, Malik Monk, who's been in a funk, to say the least, and he's been injured in Charlotte. But Donovan Mitchell was the guy over and over and over I had as attainable for Portland. That was the guy. It was him, OG Anunoby. Those are the two guys. If they came out of the draft with those guys, I was thrilled. That was a huge coup of a draft. The way I look at him, to kind of get to the other part of your question here, is how he would fit on this team. He then would make CJ McCollum quote-unquote expendable. And I don't mean to say that he's as good as CJ McCollum. And I know people will say, well, who knows if he comes to Portland, if he's as successful in Portland as he is in Utah. I don't think he would be as successful immediately in Portland as he is in Utah right now. I think he would be a guy that could be 70 to 75% of what CJ McCollum is now. And if you get that guy, 75% of CJ McCollum on a rookie scale deal, CJ's at what, 23 million Donovan Mitchell's at $4 million, roughly. If you then have the capacity to move a big contract, bring in a big contract on the wing, and now you've got Donovan Mitchell, a.k.a. baby Damian Lillard, alongside Damian Lillard with a newfound wing presence that you've traded CJ McCollum for, now you're talking about kickstarting the rebuild, quote unquote, or the retooling of this Blazers franchise and immediately putting them in competition in the upper tier in the Western Conference.
So with Alan Crabb leaving, Donovan Mitchell, is he a 2-3 or is he a 1-2?
He's more of a 1-2. He's like CJ. But as much as Crabb played the 3, he wasn't really like the Blazers. It's the same kind of thing as using like Pat Connaughton at the 3. He doesn't have the wingspan as Crabb.
Get Donovan Mitchell and trade CJ.
Yes, that was what. But I mean, that shouldn't be shocking to anybody who's heard me talk about this before. It's not that I don't like CJ, because I love CJ. I just don't think the Dame CJ backcourt is going to work. Where if you could work CJ for that wing guy, you basically have Dame CJ and the wing guy by moving CJ, if that makes sense. I mean, if for people that don't understand.
How tall is Donovan Mitchell?
I believe they have him listed at, let me pull up his official. I believe they have him listed at 6'4", but he's like CJ. He's basically CJ's size.
Okay, so he's not tall enough that they could all carry that many 6'3"
guards,
and,
exactly,
and smaller guards.
Correct. So CJ would have to go. I mean, that's kind of the idea there. Maybe CJ stays around for a year. Also, Team LeBron is now up 3 with 10 seconds to go, so that's wild. Just let's go ahead and frame what Donovan Mitchell's production has been thus far in his rookie year with rookie Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard is a rookie, played almost 39 minutes a game. Donovan Mitchell is playing 32 minutes a game. Okay, so if you go to their per 36 numbers, Donovan Mitchell's actually outperforming Damian Lillard in almost every category save assists. Per 36, Donovan Mitchell's at 22 points per game. Damian Lillard's at 18. Assists-wise, Dame's at 6, Donovan Mitchell's at 4. Steals.
How does that? What about the guys that they each had around them? I mean, it's kind of like you're plopping him in there like in a vacuum and assuming that he's going to do exactly the same.
He's kind of in that same position where they're asking him to be that scoring guy and set the table. That's what they're asking him to do. They're asking him to be what Dame did, to set the table.
And Damian had LaMarcus and Wesley Matthews and Robin Lopez. Do you consider? So I guess
I look at this Utah
Gobert.
team. Yeah, they have Gobert. I think Joe Ingles is basically your Nick Batum. Jay Crowder is going to end up being their Wes Matthews. I think in the combination of guys that they have rotating in at power forward and center positions, they aren't the same, obviously, as LaMarcus Aldridge, but they do run a lot of post-up offense and interior offense for guys like Derek Favors, and before that, a guy like Joe Johnson was getting in there. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities in what they asked rookie Damian Lillard to do and rookie Donovan Mitchell to do.
Mm-hmm. So in your opinion, the Blazers should have drafted Donovan Mitchell, traded CJ, and gotten somebody else in the wing in return for CJ.
Yeah, I mean, I know how simple that all sounds, and it would take a lot of machinations to make that work.
Yeah, you make it sound super easy.
It's a hell of a risky play, but let's put it this way, and this isn't to throw shade at Zach Collins. Who is Zach Collins coming in right now versus Donovan Mitchell coming in right now? Who's more ready already? Who's the more ready player? Okay, if you're talking about the timeline. And if you're talking about contributions now and in the future, Donovan Mitchell's a year and a half older. We're not talking like a guy who's like 5 years older. Yes, Zach Collins is younger.
So are you getting at that Donovan Mitchell is closer to age Dame and CJ and closer to readiness
exactly
to Dame, sorry, because you've already traded CJ.
Correct.
And so if you're keeping these guys who are supposed to be all growing together as a core in the same trajectory, Donovan Mitchell was a better choice.
He fits right alongside these guys. Okay. And in the one knock that I think that people found with CJ early on was the lack of defense. Donovan Mitchell from day one, does he get beat? Yes. Is the effort, intensity, and all that stuff all on the defensive end there, night in, night out? Hell yes. This dude is a competitor through and through. He is a bulldog on the basketball court. And maybe it's my bias that I see that in him, but this kid is... It's not going to be like the Blazers passing up on Michael Jordan, in my opinion. That's way too hot takey for me. But I think this is going to be...
You sound like it's that much of an impact. It's
a next tier
on
down.
Fire about this.
It's the next tier down. I think they legitimately passed up on a superstar. I think they legitimately set the franchise back a few years with this pick.
Okay.
Because what they limited themselves with by taking Zach Collins and moving up, especially right now. And that's what matters to Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. That's what matters to those guys is the right now. These guys are going into their prime. They don't want to hear.
But you've traded CJ, so you don't care what CJ thinks.
But I'm talking about just in general. Like these guys that are in their primes right now, they don't want to wait 2 years for salary to fall off the books. Like they want to compete. Damian Lillard has said steadfastly, "I want to compete. I want to be there. I want to surprise people night in, night out." Every post game, when they talk about what the goal is, that's what those guys look at. And I think that the Blazers missed the boat on this one, big time. I could be wrong in 3 years, and Zach Collins is a perennial 20-10 All-Star. I just don't see that happening.
So they missed the boat, and they're sitting on, I guess, Zach Collins Island, looking out into the future.
And praying that land appreciates.
What do the Blazers do now? I mean, that's my only that's why, like, when you said you wanted to talk about this, like, I rolled my eyes and groaned so hard, because to me this conversation is like, so what do we do now? What good is sitting here wringing our hands saying, oh, we should have gotten Donovan Mitchell, okay, maybe we should have, but what do we do now? How do the Blazers move into the future?
And that's Neil O'Shea
this is what the situation is.
Yeah, I think Neil O'Shea said it at the trade deadline. We're sitting on Zach Collins. And Dave explained it, I think, really, really well in breaking down the transcript from the O'Shea. I don't know if you want to call it a press conference, the O'Shea back and forth on NBC Sports with Dwight James. The appreciable assets that the Trailblazers currently have: Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, Al-Farouq Aminu, Zach Collins, and draft picks. Everybody else is either on a large guaranteed contract, or is a restricted free agent, or is a peripheral player in the NBA. So when he says that teams are asking about Zach Collins, that's because you've ruled out Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum as available assets. And the only other things that they have that they may want at this point in time, because Ed Davis was apparently taken off the market, is Zach Collins and draft picks. So yeah, every team is going to ask about Zach Collins, because it's the only thing that's even remotely available that anybody wants right now. The state of the NBA, as far as like financially, is in a really, really weird place. And I think there's going to be a lot of players that here in a couple months are, number one, really shocked at how much money they don't get, and number two, really angry.
Lou Williams set the bar. I mean, he set the bar at, is it $8 million a year?
Yeah, and I've heard from NBA players' agents over the past couple weeks that are not happy that Lou Williams took that deal, because he could have waited. He could have waited on that, and then the other guys would have fallen in line, or somebody else could have got one earlier. Because not only did he take less money, he gave a team option.
Yeah, that was pretty surprising.
Like, he gave them all the leverage, and that's nuts. Now teams are going to head into this free agency period like, hey, the 21-point per game All-Star who's shooting 50, 40, 90 took this. What, you're gonna take the MLE or the taxpayer MLE, right? Like, that's what these guys are offering.
You still haven't said what the Blazers do without having taken Donovan Mitchell.
So they sit on him.
When do you see them?
They sit on Zach Collins.
They sit on.
They hope he appreciates in value, whether that's on the court or as in a trade.
Well, So there's one more topic that I want to hit on, and it's kind of a good segue because we keep talking about CJ McCollum, and all year, every time we talk about CJ McCollum, I feel like we're talking about CJ in the context of, as Damian Lillard's backcourt mate, and as the Blazers' best potential trade thing to person to dangle out in trade for other teams for somebody big. But we don't really talk about CJ McCollum for CJ McCollum. So are you ready to move on from the Donovan Mitchell thing for now and turn, or is there anything else you want to finish up with?
I would just say that I hope I'm wrong here. I hope we don't look back at this in 4 years and go,
oh, I hope you're wrong too, just because I want you to be wrong, Dan.
That's fine. That's totally
fine. I love it when you're wrong.
I have cemented
I like it more when
my...
I'm right, but that's even harder to be than you being wrong.
You're right plenty often. I have cemented.
Say it. You could say it once in a while. Would it really hurt you?
Hey, I cement my takes on Twitter. I don't take them down. They are there. So I've been a big fan of guys in the draft before that didn't pan out, and I've been critical of guys that turned out to be better. So
give me one so I can make fun of you.
Off the top of my head, I'd have to go back and look at the drafts.
Oh, they're not burned into your memory?
No, because none of them were really that.
Move on real quickly from failures.
The injury is aside, this probably hurts. Or doesn't really that bad. But I thought Jabari Parker was going to be leaps and bounds better than Andrew Wiggins. Mm-hmm. That was one. I was Team Jabari, really heavy.
Yeah.
Which is weird because openly rooting for here you go, openly rooting for a Duke guy. I did not think Jason Tatum was going to be as great as he is in the NBA. I thought he would be a very average utility player, where he's turned out to be a near or building towards a all-star caliber player. I did not see that coming from him at all.
Quite so fast. Okay, well here's what I want to do, my observation about CJ, and then you can respond. So the thing about CJ is, for the first couple of years he was here, he had the broken foot his first year. They developed him. They brought him along slowly. I believe he spent a pretty good chunk of time in back then it was the D League. And then in his third year is when he got minutes. And as soon as he got minutes, he started to produce. That was the year that he won Most Improved Player, which he argued he got it because he actually got a chance to play, that he'd always been that good all along. Of course, he's obligated to say that. But as I was looking at CJ's, just his basic stat numbers, his points per game, his assists, his rebounds, things like that, from 2 years ago, last year, and this year, they're really quite consistent. They don't, he's, around, between like 20 plus. And I think he had 23 last year, and he's back at, 21 or something this year for points per game. His rebound, when you look at his per 36 minutes, they're, his rebounds, his assists, it's a lot of them are very consistent throughout all 3 years. But the thing that stands out to me is that the first 2 years where he really came on, so 15-16 and then 16-17, he played point guard about a third of the time he was playing point guard, and then the rest of the time he was playing shooting guard. So he and Dame were sharing the point guard things. This year, with the emergence of Shabazz as an actual backup point guard, CJ is down to about 12%, and that's from Basketball Reference. So he's down to about 12% as point guard, and yet his numbers are still remarkably the same. He just seems like a really steady player, and it makes me nervous to think about, considering how much other instability or at least inconsistency we have in other players on this team. It makes me super nervous to think about trading somebody like him away.
Yeah, I think that's always the hesitation, right? Is that he is I hate using the whole consistency, steady Eddie kind of deal, because that's not.
But he is right now to this team.
Oh yeah,
that's important.
And he is. But I think that undersells how good he is too. Like, not only is he consistent, and he's near he's fringe all-star.
he's consistently good.
Yeah, it's a different level of consistently good. Ben Golliver had his thing called the shake rating. You know, the variance between good and bad games. The actual outcome of shake was not good, but the concept and the idea of it.
I'm not familiar with the shake rating. Can you give me a little bit more background?
I have to pull up his exact differences between the two, but
what I mean in general, what does it measure?
The consistency from game to game in production
of a player.
Yes. So let's say probably 2 years ago, one thing I talked about with Damian Lillard was that he could be wildly volatile. Like one game he could have 18 on 4 of 17 shooting, while the next game he could have 50 on 16 of 25.
As opposed to someone having like 21 every night.
CJ's going to have like 19 to 20 every but at the same time, up until this season, how many truly explosive games had we really received from CJ McCollum? I think his career high heading into this year, I think, was 37.
And that was one of those playoff ones, wasn't it?
Well, I'm just talking regular season, and I think that was against Phoenix. I think that was the first game of this year or last year.
Oh, everybody has.
Yeah, but I mean, like, don't get me wrong. CJ has like one hot quarter, and then he's consistent. Like when he gets on one, like whereas opposed to Dame, when Dame gets on one, it's all game long, just flamethrower, melt your eyes, good luck defense, wrap it up, we're out of here. Like I mean, that's Dame in a nutshell, and I think that's what truly separates Dame from the rest of the NBA. It's him and 5 other guys that can win you a game just by themselves. I don't think CJ has that in him, but that's not a knock against CJ because I think where CJ prevails is that he's one of the most consistent guys, with the exception of this year where he had that stretch of just god awful basketball. He had like a 2-week stretch where it was like, dude, what is? And it was really hard to fathom because you're so used to that consistent CJ, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
well, and I think, I mean, his numbers, like, so he went from, scoring 20.8 2 years ago, then he went up to 23, and now he's back down to 21.7. And I think part of that is reflected in the, in that. That cold streak that he had. So it probably could be a little bit higher.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to take a look at like where those guys are at, like you talk about how great a shooter and consistent a shooter CJ McCollum is, right? He's shooting 45% on the season. You know what Damian Lillard's shooting on the season?
What?
44.7.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's the kind of season. So that's the kind of season Damian Lillard's been having. So you want to talk about like production and things of that nature. Dame has elevated himself to CJ's level of consistency by having these monster games where he's shooting 60, 70%. CJ's fallen off ever so slightly in the field goal percentage department by having some of that, like you said, those rougher stretches because, I don't know if it's rough. I think it's his season last year from mid-range was disturbing. The level of success,
disturbingly good.
Yeah, it was the level of success that he had in the mid-range last year was just nutty. Like he was one of the best mid-range shooters, like per volume last year in NBA history. It was like what he did. And I think we became numb to how good he was. So when he stopped hitting that, all of a sudden we were kind of like, "What's wrong with him?" When he really just regressed from god tier basketball to like mere mortal.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what about all of the intangibles that CJ, or, the non-measurables, I guess the eye test stuff and, some of those other things that CJ brings to the game that are not reflected in analytics? We don't really talk about that much with him either. What are some of the things that you notice about him? One of the things I notice about him is he comes flying in for crucial rebounds. Sometimes he gets the rebound that changes the tone at the end of the game. And I'm always like, was that CJ? He's averaging just shy of 4 a game, but I feel like some of the ones that he gets are the crucial ones.
Yeah, no. I think that timing is a good way to explain CJ's game. Throughout the game, he hits timely shots. He gets timely rebounds. he gets timely steals. The one knock I would say that's on CJ is that in late game situations, particularly this year, he's not been good. That's
in late game. Well, we know he missed his free throws that one time.
He's missed free throws a couple times. He's gotten to his spot at that elbow for the pull-up a couple times. He's gotten to the rim and gone to the floater a couple times. He's gotten and pulled up for three a couple times. And more often than not, he's fallen short. And it's like, for a guy who you consider to be, again, so timely, it's wildly contrasted.
Well, maybe that's that luck that we conveniently pull out every time we can't explain something.
Yeah, because I mean, Dame
those situations be attributed to that?
Absolutely, because when you talk, like, 9 times out of 10, if you give me CJ McCollum on a pull-up 15-footer from the elbow in rhythm, give me that shot. It's just like I don't know. And the same with him at the free throw line. Like, maybe it's a mental thing. And again, not everybody has the quote unquote clutch gene, and that's okay. Like Damian Lillard,
yeah, but he doesn't play like somebody who doesn't have it, though.
No,
you know?
I think he has the confidence to have it. I just don't know if he necessarily has the capacity to deliver regularly. And maybe that's that's recency bias because he's missed some lately. But it doesn't feel like in those moments he's really excelled. Whereas Damian Lillard, even though the percentages may be against him, it feels like because he's had those big moments that he's perhaps more clutch than he is.
So since the Blazers obviously do not have Donovan Mitchell and CJ remains one of the best players on the team and likely very attractive to other teams. I'm going to go back to talking about CJ the way we usually do, which is as
how
part
do we trade
of the
him?
Trade. No, I'm not trying to get rid of him. I'm trying to understand, given his consistency and his production, I mean, how reliable would the person that you trade CJ have to be for it, to be worth risking? I mean, because you already have a center who right now has his ups and downs. I mean, would you rather have a solid backcourt that is going to come and play every single night? Would you rather, or would you rather trade for a wing that has the potential of being amazing together with a center that has the potential of being amazing, but you don't know what you're getting? It makes me nervous to think about losing CJ when you don't know for sure what's coming in.
That's the dice you're rolling. Because I think a guy like Donovan Mitchell, I think when we look back at him, and I know this is crazy to talk about, we're not even through his first year yet. I think when you look at him at the end of, or in his prime, he's going to be a guy that's very much like and this is going to be like basketball heresy, he's a combination of Damian Lillard and Dwayne Wade. That's how I look at Donovan Mitchell. That's how his game reminds me of, like how he plays, the tenacity. But you're also going to get some of that Dame and Dwayne volatility. They're not the consistently steady Eddie shooters. But if you were going to trade CJ McCollum for somebody at the wing position, in my mind, it would be like one of those deals we discussed, like a Chris Middleton or an Aaron Gordon, Evan Fournier mix. You know what I mean? Something along those lines. So then you have Dame, and then somebody you don't know playing shooting guard, and then Evan Fournier playing wing. Yep, and then Aaron Gordon and Jusuf Nurkic. But I understand how that would
You're dreaming.
Hey,
sort of. Well, I don't know what this is. It's a dream, or a fever dream, maybe.
It's a fun dream. Don't get me wrong. Again, for people that take this the wrong way, I love CJ McCollum. I truly do. I just don't think in the long run, barring a miracle, the Blazers have the necessary assets to bring in a 3 alongside those two guys. Whereas had they drafted a guy to basically ready-made replace CJ McCollum, or 70% of CJ McCollum, then you move CJ McCollum for a guy that can be that two-way wing. Let's say Paul George agrees to re-sign and re-up on his deal, and everything's good and grand in the perfect world for CJ McCollum. Now, if you've got Dame Paul George and Donovan Mitchell, you're I mean, not just you, but I mean in general, you're telling me that's not going to be a team that's going to be...
No, me personally.
That's not going to be a team that's going to be in the upper tier of not only the Western Conference, but in the NBA? I mean, that's a damn good lineup. Dame, Mitchell, Paul George, Aminu Nurkic. That's a lineup that can compete night in, night out.
I'm into this as a thought experiment, but I just think that there are too many variables to be so confident that what the Blazers did was wrong.
The reason I'm so confident in Donovan Mitchell is because I think he's so good no matter what situation he went to, save maybe Orlando or Phoenix, where they just don't know what they're doing, it seems like a lot of times. He would have found a way to be a star. That's the kind of, I think he's just that good of a player.
Yeah. So you're gonna this is the hill you're gonna die on.
Oh yeah. No, I think this kid is truly special. I legitimately do. I don't know if he's destined for the Hall of Fame, but I think he's gonna make, if he doesn't make All-Star games year in, year out, I think his career is probably gonna, as far as production, is gonna mimic that of Damian Lillard. I really do. I think he's gonna be a guy who's gonna give you 22, 23, 24, 5 and 5, night in, night out, and just be a dynamic guy. And I think in the long run, like I said earlier, I don't think this is going to haunt the Blazers like Bowie Jordan, but I think this is the one that they're going to look at, especially the younger guys right now that are watching this team right now. Younger folks are going to sit there and go, man, how nice would that have been?
Well, hindsight's 20/20, isn't it?
Yeah, sometimes 2010.
There's a reason that's a saying. But let's finish up. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope Zach Collins turns out to be everybody's hopes and dreams. I just don't see it happening right now. It's very hard for me to imagine.
Let's talk about what the Blazers need to do to finish out strong this season. I think the next game they play is going to be against Utah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm actually going to be in Utah for that game.
Oh, that's right. This is the one you're going to.
Yes.
Do you want me to give you my Donovan Mitchell sign? I'm going to have one of those giant fat heads of Donovan Mitchell right alongside Damian Lillard so I can pretend. You know what? After we get off here, I'm gonna boot up 2K on the Xbox, and I'm going to trade Donovan Mitchell for CJ McCollum.
Oh, Dan. Let's talk about how the Blazers...
I'll force trade Donovan Mitchell for Zach Collins.
I want to have a super quick discussion about whether or not you think, and this is like, no, we're not going to go deep into this because we're going long, but what are the Blazers going to make the playoffs? I believe I heard you basically guaranteeing that the Blazers are making the playoffs. So you're not worried.
No, the only caveat that I have to this is injury, obviously, and that caveats, I think, everything when you're talking about the NBA. But I think the Blazers are in perfect position to make the playoffs, and I don't think that's really going to be an issue. They got on a nice little roll there. They've won some games they shouldn't have won to kind of make up for some games that they shouldn't have lost earlier in the season. Mm-hmm. So I think they've done enough of that to compensate for some really, really bad losses. But this closing schedule,
they got a rough schedule coming up.
Good. I mean, we went down this on the outside.
And it's against Northwest Division opponents too.
The final 2 weeks of the season is just absolutely vicious and will absolutely positively decide playoff seeding. Okay, so your last 2 weeks of the season, Rockets, Celtics, Thunder, Pelicans, Grizzlies, there's your winnable game, right out of the chute. There's your one. And then you get Clippers Grizzlies again. So if you're talking about how you need to close the game or close the season, you get the Grizzlies twice and the Mavericks. But the downside is you get
you hope that the Pelicans you hope that the Clippers are falling off.
Yeah, because the Clippers are right there too. But you get the Clippers twice, the Grizzlies twice, and the Mavericks. Those are your quote unquote gimme games that you have to win. Because other than that, it's Thunder, Pelicans, Grizzlies, Clippers, Grizzlies, Mavericks, Rockets, Spurs, Nuggets, Jazz. Let me give you that last four again. Rockets, Spurs, Nuggets, Jazz, with the last Jazz game being the only home game in that stretch.
Oh my God, I'm going to be so tired of the Jazz.
Yeah, no,
At least we probably won't have to play them in the first round. So
yeah, I don't think Portland can get to 4 and the Jazz can get to 5 unless, the Jazz keep this win streak going and get to 20. But for those people that are writing off the Jazz or looking at the standings right now, like, oh, Utah's not going to be there, blah, 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 blah. I've looked at all the projections and adjusted projections, strength of schedule, all that kind of stuff. 538 gives the Jazz a better chance at making the playoffs than the Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah. I mean, they still have the Blazers at what, like, is it more than 65?
Yeah, I think it was 65 or 66%. The Jazz were at like 90%. So it kind of gives you an idea of the schedules these two are facing down the stretch. There's almost a 30% variance between the two.
Yeah. And this winning streak that the Jazz are on, that's the hardest part of their schedule.
Yeah. I mean, and they're beating the crap out of people. Like that game against Portland, that was not a close game. And it wasn't like Portland was just off and they caught the Blazers on a bad night. The Jazz just beat them. That's what that was. That was an old-fashioned take them out to the woodshed whooping. And I haven't seen most of the Blazers' losses this year have not been of that type. They've been of the they didn't care type or they didn't care soon enough type.
They squandered something at the end,
exactly.
Kind of thing, or they just missed the last shot.
They haven't been games where you're like they just got beat. The Toronto or the Toronto game. The Toronto game and the Detroit game. Both those games to me were games that they just got beat. Toronto was nuts.
I think the OKC and Minnesota games that are coming up are going to be really good measures to show where the Blazers are right now. Yeah, I mean, I love my Portland Trailblazers. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I am just a worrier. And so, like, it's funny because we have such different attitudes, but you are, like, just so convinced about them going to the playoffs. And I don't want to say I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but I'm nervous. And, like, my stomach is in knots about the rest of this season. Because
there's certainly a chance that something happens. Because right now, as things sit, let me pull up the standings here again. I believe the Jazz and the Clippers are on the outside looking in right now, right? They're a half game back, something along those lines. I keep having to check these because everybody's so honestly, close.
It's been discussed so many times, and it'll be discussed a million more times. I don't think we need to go into the details because between number 4 and number 10, it's ridiculous.
It's 4.5 games between 4 and 10.
I think it's funny how confident you are and how nervous I am when we're both looking at the same numbers. And in general, I have a more positive outlook, and in general, you're much more doom and gloom. I just think it's funny.
Honestly, the two things
that different attitudes about that.
I would say the two things that convince me, the two non-Portland things that convince me: New Orleans losing Boogie and the Clippers not having Blake Griffin. Those right. Like no matter how they play or don't play, the boost that you get after making a trade typically. Right. I just look at those two guys not being on those teams, and I'm like, that's going to hurt them on the stretch run.
Right. It might be adrenaline at this point that's keeping their teams afloat. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, exactly. There's something there that they're popping off on, and they're riding that wave right now. I think Minnesota, even though they're 5-5 in their last 10, they're still 4 or 5 games up on Portland. Like their mediocre play has still been better than most of the league. Like if they figure it out, them and OKC are the ones. Like if they figure it out, they can really get away from the other teams, I think. And then Denver's getting Paul Millsap back. So while I think Portland's in a good position to make the playoffs, and I think it's probably better than what the prognosticators are putting out there. I think Portland's been, at this point in time, capable of playing good to great basketball down the stretch. I don't think some of those teams at the bottom are going to be healthy enough to really put the fear of God in the Blazers down the stretch run, where the Blazers are much more in control of their basketball destiny, so to speak.
Right. Okay, well, you made me feel slightly better. Just don't talk about Donovan Mitchell anymore.
I can't promise that. The Blazers do play the Utah Jazz in their first game back, so right. My Twitter feed will be mostly Donovan Mitchell praise.
I'll see if I can get an up close and personal picture of him for you, Dan, and then we'll never speak of it again. But the next time we talk, I will be in Utah. It's good to talk to you after a week off, and moving forward, we should be able to arrange it so that we get back on our regular schedule.
Yes.
And maybe we can even get a few more of those previews with some of the teams that are coming in, because it is going to be really interesting down the stretch, and I really want to kind of
understanding where somebody from Utah or somebody from Denver or somebody from the Clippers, the other teams that are around Portland vying for those positions, should be really fun. So you and I will both work to bring in those guys, to bring in that point of view to see kind of what we can pull out of there, because I know everybody loved the one with Caitlin Cooper with the Pacers, as in depth as she was. So I think that'll be really cool to bring in that outside perspective down the home stretch.
Well, yeah, and let's remind everybody, if they have any suggestions or questions that they want to bring to us, you can email us at blazersedgepod@gmail.com. Mm-hmm. Dan, why don't you, let's see, if people want to tweet at me or follow me on Twitter and listen to me go on and on about how much I love the Olympics and Dolly Parton as well as the Portland Trailblazers.
Dolly Parton in the Olympics.
Okay, so one of my favorite Dolly Parton YouTube videos is her and Kenny Rogers singing, I think it's Islands in the Stream, but they're singing it at the Memorial Coliseum, and they make this really hilarious and lame reference to the Portland Trailblazers, and it's why I love her even more.
Dolly Parton's the one that does the KFC commercials, right?
No, that's not Dolly Parton, Dan. Oh my God, we have a lot to talk about, but we'll do that off wax. I am at TCB Biggs on Twitter. Why don't you take us out of here, Dan?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at DMarang. All this week, you can find us on NBC Sports Northwest at 7 p.m. as it's All-Star break. So we'll be covering your Blazers Outsiders at 7 p.m. Me, Shane Brennan, Joe Simons. Hit me up on Twitter for questions here, questions of the show. Questions for Tara and I. We're always looking to get the user feedback, interaction, fans, whatever you want to call it. We want to know what you guys think and what you guys want to know, because we'll definitely address all that stuff. But for Tara, I'm Dan, Danny, whatever it's going to be going forward. Thanks for listening. You can catch us on iTunes, on the Almighty Baller Podcast Network, and pretty much anywhere else for your podcast needs. And we'll catch you next week. Take care, everybody.